Code of conduct. For the participants in the Zoom cloud meeting, the interpreter is available in English and Indonesian through the interpreter channel. Good morning, good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon you. The Honorable Director General of National Archive of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Imam Gunarto. The Honorable Director of National Archive of Singapore, Mrs. Julia Chi. The Honorable Director General of National Archive of Malaysia, Mr. Jafar Sidek. The Honorable Deputy of Information and Archival System Development of the National Archive of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Andi Kasman. The Honorable Secretary General of International Council on Archives, Dr. Antea Sels. The Honorable Acting Secretary General of the National Archive of the Republic of Indonesia, Mrs. Rini Agustiani. The Honorable Acting Deputy of Archive Administration, National Archive of the Republic of Indonesia, Mrs. Multi Siswati. The Honorable Panelist, Professor Yudo Giri Sucahyo, MCom PhD, from Universitas Indonesia. Lee Gema, Secretary of Digital Records, Innovation Division of the National Archive of Korea. Mr. Stephen Fox, Assistant Director for Collection Management of the National Archive of Australia. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, first of all, praise the Lord, God the Almighty, because only by His grace and blessing we could join together today, 25th of November 2021, in the virtual webinar Day 3, Digital Transformation for Records and Archive Management. Excellencies, distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Opening speech delivered by Deputy of Information and Archival System Development of the National Archive of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Andi Kasman. Hello, Mr. Andi. Good afternoon, sir. Selamat siang, Bapak.
Ini, baik.
Can you hear me?
Baik.
Okay.
Baik. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Yang terhormat Kepala Arsip Nasional Republik Indonesia, Bapak Dr. Andes Imam Gunarto, MHum, yang saya hormati para pimpinan tinggi di lingkungan Arsip Nasional Republik Indonesia, yang saya hormati para narasumber webinar SARBICA International Seminar. Keynote speech Ibu Dr. Antea Sels dari UK, sebagai Sekretaris Jenderal International Council Archive, Bapak Profesor Yudo Giri Sucahyo, MCom PhD dari Universitas Indonesia, Ibu Lee Gema, Sekretaris National Archive of Korea, sebagai Digital Record Innovation Division, Bapak Jafar Sidek, Direktur Jenderal National Archive of Malaysia, Bapak Stephen Fox, Assistant Director for Collection Management, National Archive of Australia. Para peserta webinar SARBICA International Seminar yang ada di ruang Zoom meeting dan di kanal YouTube Arsip Nasional Republik Indonesia yang saya hormati dan banggakan. Hadirin sekalian yang saya hormati. Pertama-tama, marilah kita memanjatkan puji dan syukur kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Tuhan yang Maha Kuasa. Karena atas perkenannya kita dapat bersama-sama menghadiri acara webinar International Seminar hari ketiga secara online menggunakan aplikasi Zoom Meeting dalam rangka SARBICA International Seminar dengan tema Digital Transformation for Record and Archive Management. Webinar International Seminar ini diselenggarakan dalam rangkaian SARBICA International Seminar Executive Board Meeting and General Conference pada tanggal 23 sampai dengan 25 November 2021 dalam rangka membangun kapasitas dan kompetensi sumber daya manusia Karsipan dalam transformasi digital di era revolusi industri 4.0. SARBICA International Seminar, General Conference ke-22, dan Executive Board Meeting ke-23 mengambil tema Safeguarding the Archives dengan 3 subtema, yaitu memori, pandemi, and teknologi. Dengan Safeguarding the Archives memiliki filosofi dan makna yang sesuai dengan semangat penyelenggaraan Karsipan dunia saat ini. Peran Arsip Nasional Republik Indonesia, atau disingkat dengan ANRI, sangat strategis sebagai lembaga Karsipan nasional dan juga sebagai pembina Karsipan nasional dalam rangka penguatan infrastruktur peraturan perundang-undangan, sistem dan kelembagaan Karsipan, serta peralihan menuju kemandirian teknologi Karsipan nasional dalam penerapan sistem pemerintahan berbasis elektronik atau disebut dengan SPBE. Masa pandemi COVID-19 ini juga membuat lembaga Karsipan harus melakukan transformasi digital dalam penyelenggaraan Karsipan secara nasional. Semua kegiatan yang dilaksanakan secara konvensional dan klasikal berubah menjadi secara daring, dan peran infrastruktur teknologi dan kapasitas kompetensi sumber daya manusia Karsipan atau arsiparis menjadi kunci utama di masa transisi teknologi ini. Bapak dan Ibu yang kami hormati, webinar internasional seminar Karsipan hari ketiga ini yang membahas transformasi digital di bidang Karsipan dilakukan melalui berbagai metode, di mana salah satunya adalah melalui kecerdasan buatan atau artificial intelligence. Penguatan teknologi Karsipan dengan menggunakan artificial intelligence sebagai titik bangkit atau driving force bagi penyelenggaraan Karsipan dan profesi arsiparis untuk penggunaan teknologi dalam mendukung kemudahan pengelolaan arsip negara dalam mengidentifikasi, menetapkan, dan melakukan preservasi arsip digital dan membuat arsip negara dapat diakses oleh publik di era keterbukaan informasi ini. Dengan artificial intelligence untuk pengelolaan arsip negara, maka menjadi alternatif solusi manajemen Karsipan dalam pengelolaan informasi Karsipan nasional. Transformasi digital juga harus didukung penguatan electronic government menuju era budaya digital. Dan kita membutuhkan sharing pengalaman dan contoh terkait beberapa riset keberhasilan implementasi electronic government dalam pengelolaan record and archives di berbagai negara. Karena suksesnya electronic government dan open government dalam transformasi Karsipan perlu memperhatikan tantangan dan riset-riset yang sudah ada untuk menjadi referensi kesuksesan transformasi digital Karsipan tersebut. Berbicara terkait electronic government dan open government, beberapa negara yang bisa menjadi contoh kesuksesan pengelolaan kearsipannya, seperti Indonesia dengan sistem pemerintahan berbasis elektronik yang diatur dalam Peraturan Presiden Nomor 95 Tahun 2018 yang kita sebut dengan Sistem Informasi Karsipan Dinamis Terintegrasi atau SRI Kandi. Peraturan Pemerintah Nomor 28 Tahun 2012 yang mengatur Sistem Informasi Karsipan Nasional SIKN dan Jaringan Informasi Karsipan Nasional JIKN. Bagaimana Korea melakukan reformasi dalam penguatan transformasi dalam pemerintahan terbuka untuk mendukung record management yang handal. Pengalaman berharga dari Arsip Nasional Korea, Arsip Nasional Republik Indonesia, dan Arsip Nasional Malaysia bisa menjadi sebagai contoh negara yang dapat menjadi acuan dalam penyelenggaraan transformasi digital kearsipan yang mampu mempromosikan transparansi pemerintahan dan perubahan teknologi dengan penerapan Record and Archive Management System. Digitalisasi dan preservasi digital kearsipan juga menjadi kunci dalam transformasi digital jangka panjang dengan sukses dan akses yang lebih luas. Arsip Nasional Australia akan berbagi tentang bagaimana digitalisasi kearsipan menjadi program unggulan akselerasi penerapan standar kualifikasi digitalisasi arsip dengan Record Archive Value sebagai technical requirement pada rencana induk digitalisasi kearsipan National Digitization and Preservation Strategy. Bapak, Ibu yang kami hormati, sekian pengantar saya ucapkan selamat mengikuti webinar SARBICA International Seminar. Semoga webinar ini sukses dan kita semua mendapatkan manfaat khususnya dalam transformasi digital di bidang kearsipan. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Andi Kasman. Ladies and gentlemen, for the next session is keynote speech delivered by Secretary General for International Council on Archives, Mrs. Antea Sales. Hello, good afternoon, Mrs. Antea Sales. How are you?
Fine, and you? It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Then are you ready to delivering your speech?
I am very much looking forward to it.
Time is yours. Please.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So firstly, thank you to the National Archives of Indonesia for organizing this event and providing all of the technical support, and also to the SARBICA board for inviting me to present today, and to all the distinguished guests that are here. So what I will be doing today is I will be discussing the impact of artificial intelligence on archives. May you activate my screen share so I can share my presentation with you. Thank you very much. So I'll be discussing artificial intelligence and archives. Some of these sort of technologies that I'll be discussing are things that I have experimented with when I worked at National Archives of the United Kingdom. And as well, this is work that I did when I was, that I continue to do rather, while as Secretary General, though much more in a research-based perspective, learning from other archives internationally that are implementing and using these technologies. So I'm going to discuss what is artificial intelligence, because there are many different components of artificial intelligence. I'm going to talk about the use and of artificial intelligence and government, and the implications this has for us as archivists. Automating archival practice, appraisal, selection, and sensitivity review. And also something to consider as well is access and reuse of born digital and digitized materials in research, and the automation of research, particularly I consider in the digital humanities. So there are many components when we talk about artificial intelligence. So there is artificial intelligence as a general term. And that covers just about anything that to do with sort of teaching a machine to replicate human ways of doing or thinking. And it combines mathematics, statistics, and computer science, as well as, depending on the types of artificial intelligence that you are using, that also includes probability and on commercially available models. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence, and there are subsets to machine learning, which I will discuss at a very high level during the course of this presentation. And then there is deep learning, which is really neural networks, and neural networks are essentially layers of machine learning algorithms that act like the human brain. And so they reason through data. So a really good example of deep learning neural networks is facial recognition software, which essentially identifies things. You'll have an algorithm that will identify skin color, another algorithm that will identify eye color, another algorithm that will identify the relationship of the eyes to the mouth to the nose. So those types of ratios, and they're layered one after another. And that's what's called deep learning. And those are deep or layers of neural networks. So under machine learning, and this is really what I will be focusing on in my sort of discussion today, because that's what I tested when I was at National Archives. Commercially available neural networks are not really available on the market, as far as I am aware. What we used at National Archives was really supervised machine learning, which is that you have to teach the machine by tagging information and showing it what you want it to look for. There are unsupervised applications, commercial applications on the market, but there are questions I have about unsupervised learning, about how it was trained to do what it is doing and how useful it is in an archival context. And then there's reinforcement learning. And that's mostly used in AI gamings, as well as in the financial markets. So it's about a machine predicting an outcome, but also that you have the capabilities to then put more information into the algorithm to influence the outcome. It's a much more dynamic and reactive machine learning algorithm. Having said all of that, what I'm really going to focus on today, though, are three areas around the use of machine learning and things that as archivists and records managers, we need to be aware of. The first is the impact of machine learning in government. Governments are using machine learning and data mining software on a large scale in order to help make policy decisions. This has an impact on us as archivists. And the reason it has an impact on us as archivists and records managers is that these algorithms are the records of the future. Governments are making policy decisions using algorithms, and they need to be held accountable for that. But as archivists and records managers, we also need to know what to capture, what are all the different components of the machine learning that we need to capture. And there's also an element of how do we ensure the ethical implementation of these algorithms, because sometimes archivists, because of our historical perspective, and records managers, because of the active information that we manage, this gives us a certain perspective on what is happening and how we can best advise governments on the creation of algorithms that will help them make meaningful decisions. As records managers, we have an overview of all the information that a government department and even other departments might have at their disposal to help train an algorithm. And as archivists, we have historical perspective about things that people that are training algorithms need to be aware of, historical bias, things that need to be considered. And these are important considerations as we look at our role in the use of artificial intelligence in government. So this is a really key study about artificial intelligence that was used in a judicial context in the United States and Texas. And this is an example of what I would call perhaps not the best application of artificial intelligence. So this measured something called recidivism rates, or the rate that someone would commit an offense. And so to help judges in Texas make a decision about the likelihood that someone who is applying for release or parole would actually reoffend. Unfortunately, the data that was used to train the algorithm was heavily biased. It was heavily biased towards African American and the Latino community, in that they were more likely, the probability that was given to them was that they were more likely to offend. But that was because the questionnaire that was given, that was eventually used to train the algorithm, kind of predisposed those communities to be classed as higher risk of recidivism when there may not have been that case. This was created by a private sector organization, which is called North Point. And so this is the issue when we look at also government application of machine learning. It's that these applications are also often developed by private sector organizations that have commercial interests, and they may not be willing to be transparent about the usage of artificial intelligence and their algorithms. So there is a level here that archivists we need to be aware of, both in terms of our own practice and the application of artificial intelligence in our practice, as well as the impact this will have in our acquisition of these algorithms, because we can't necessarily acquire something that's protected by copyright or intellectual property, which creates a whole nother thing that we need to consider as we look at artificial intelligence as a record. So these are the types of things that we need to begin to think about as we discuss AI in government and our role in advising government on the creation of AI. And what is, I think, when I look at this as an archivist who's worked in government, what do I need to prove the rigor of the decision that government is making using this algorithm? Or what are the things that I need to capture to make sure that if a citizen wishes to query the output of an algorithm, that I have as much as I possibly can to make available to them? And it's not outside the realms of possibility, though it hasn't happened yet, of having access requests made against algorithms. So that's a whole nother area that I don't think we've really considered as a profession. And I think it's something that we need to think about. Then there's use of artificial intelligence in archival practice, which was mentioned earlier. So when I was at the UK government, what we found was that there were vast volumes of unorganized information in government departments that made it very difficult for us as National Archives to identify what were the records that needed to be transferred to National Archives under the Public Records Act. And so one way we tried to tackle this issue was to look at commercial off-the-shelf software that we might be able to use to help us do appraisal and selection. So what we discovered through the application and testing was that most of the commercially available pieces of software were really great at doing traditional keyword and Boolean searches, regular expressions. So regular expressions are things like numbers or patterns that repeat in the same way. So for example, national insurance number or national identification number, credit card numbers, these types of things that are regularly expressed in the same way. And they can process at scale. So they can go through large volumes of information in a short period of time. Whereas as a human, when we have those types of volumes of information to deal with, it's impossible for us to review anything. We're talking about millions, sometimes billions of records. What they don't do well is understand or infer context. So I will give you an example of that. We tested this piece of this software in the area of identifying confidential information. So things like national security, international relations, information provided in confidence. And these machines performed very badly on those elements because they are entirely based on the context in which the information is expressed. A piece of information in one document could be unclassified, but expressed in a different way in another document, it is classified. And this is where there's a balance that needs to be struck between the human and the machine. We need to remember that these are tools. They may seem very advanced and they may seem like they can do a lot of really advanced things, but they are still machines and they cannot do everything. They can't do, there's expectations sometimes that these machines can do complex processing that is not possible. So there is a balance here that needs to be struck between when the human needs to be involved and when the machine needs to be involved. And that is something we definitely learned when we were doing this. I think a big question, I won't be able to go through this whole slide, but is how do we measure accuracy? It will never be 100%. And we need to move away from the notion that these machines will achieve 100% accuracy. And so there will always be a margin of error. And how much of that margin of error is acceptable to us? And how do we manage? How do we mitigate for the risk? And so that is a question we need to think about very seriously within our profession. We need to be mindful that when we're engaging with these technologies, that there are levels of bias that we need to accept in our records. Our records are historical. They reflect a time and a space. And we need to accept that bias. But equally, we need to make sure that we are not, by extension, biasing history through our selection, appraisal and selection decisions using these machines. So there is a big discussion we need to have in the community about what does good enough look like when we are applying machine learning in our practice. Finally, making records accessible for research. So there are researchers out there already that are designing machine learning algorithms in order to automate, to do digital history. And as archivists, I think we need to look at this very carefully. I think even in terms of the companies that we are working with around digitizing our records, we should not, and I repeat, we should not be handing over our data without considering whether or not our data will then be used by certain companies to do machine learning. When we are in contract negotiations with companies, doesn't matter which one, which private company, we need to ensure that we are adding clauses to these contracts that say, we're happy for you to digitize the material and to make commercial use of it, because we have a lot of those contracts in play to help us digitize materials, but you may not, and I repeat, you may not use that material to train any machine learning or artificial intelligence software that your company may be developing. And this is vital. We have already had a lot of material that's been digitized, and we didn't know the applications of machine learning at the time, but now we need to engage much more intelligently and be much more aware when we get into these commercial contracts. And there are questions we really need to ask ourselves when we're engaging with researchers that want to do machine learning research and go across our records. So these are considerations we need to think about. In conclusion, I think, government use of artificial intelligence, what is the role of archives and information management community in this area? What are the skills we need to have? What is the record? I think we need to not lose sight of the fact that artificial intelligence is record. It is the record of the future. It is the record now because it's being created now, and we need to be involved in those discussions. I think when we use machine learning in our own practices, what is it? Accuracy. What are the risks we are willing to accept, and what is good enough? And how do we document the decisions that we make using AI? And then finally, how much access is too much access when we're looking at machine learning for research? What are the right decisions or right questions to ask from companies that we may be engaging with? And how do researchers want to use our information in order to do their research? And there are questions we need to ask about how much access we're willing to give them. So that, in a very quick nutshell, is my perspectives on artificial intelligence and the application to the archival profession. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I look forward to taking questions later.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Anthea Sells, for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the presentation for Mrs. Anthea Sells. It was really thought-provoking regarding the current digital transformation. It indeed enhances our knowledge on artificial intelligence and archives. Once again, thank you very much, Mrs. Antea Sales. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, for the next program, 4 presenters will present their topics in a discussion panel. First, e-government in Indonesia, transformation for the digital age, delivered by Professor Yudo Giri Sucahyo, MCom, PhD, from Universitas Indonesia. Second, National Archive of Korea Technology on Records and Archive Management, delivered by Lee Gema, Secretary of National Archive of Korea, Digital Records Innovation Division. Third, Digitization and Preservation of the National Archive at-risk collection, delivered by Stephen Fox of Australia. Development of Technology, Records and Archive Management in Malaysia, delivered by Jafar Siddiq, Director General, National Archive of Malaysia. And as moderator, Mr. Egy Dilianda. Hello, Mr. Egy. How do you do?
I'm great. Thank you very much, Mrs. Erika.
It's great for us to have you join us today
Sure.
for leading the presentation, the discussion panel amongst 4 speakers.
Yep.
So, are you ready to begin, Mr. Egy?
I couldn't wait. I'm already excited to have the discussions.
How I can see that you are very excited today. Okay, then, time is yours. Please, Mr. Egy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Erika. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good afternoon from Jakarta, Indonesia, to all distinguished participants and also distinguished speakers. My name is Egy Dilianda, and it is my honor to welcome you all to the 3rd day of International Webinar, Safeguarding the Archive, Memory, Pandemic, and Technology. Distinguished participants, now we have arrived in the Industry 4.0, which heavily focuses on interconnectivity, machine learning, and also real-time data. Every day, we often hear the terms of Internet of Things, disruptions, digital revolutions, automations, and also the artificial intelligence. The Industry 4.0 changing the way we live, changing the way we're doing business, even changing the way we're managing our organizations and also its resources in the pace that we have never seen before. Today's topic is digital transformation for records and archives management. We're going to discuss on how we do harness this potential of such technological advancements to enhance our capacity in managing the archive, to improve our organization, and of course, to provide a better services for public. Distinguished participants, for the first speakers, I would like to invite Professor Yudo Giri Sucahyo, PhD. Good afternoon, Professor Yudo. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Egy. Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you, sir. I can feel the excitement, the atmosphere. Are you ready? Yeah. So,
Great.
yeah. Before we begin, please allow me to give you a bit of introductions. Who are you to the all participants? Professor Yudo Giri is a professor from University of Indonesia. He earned his PhD from Curtin University. He has abundance of expertise in digital economy, IT risk management, e-government, information security. Well, the list goes on and on, Professor. We can spend all day to talk about your achievement and contribution to society. So are you ready, Professor?
Yes.
Yeah, you have 15 minutes. The screen
Okay.
is yours.
Thank you very much, Agi. Thank you very much to SARBICA for inviting me as one of the speakers in this event. I really appreciate it. It's an honor for me to participate. As in terms of reference, National Archive subtitled Transformation for the Digital Age. So in the next 15 minutes, let me share with you what happens in Indonesia for this digital transformation. For the committee, could you please show my slide, please? Okay. So I will start my talk on the Industry 4.0, but do not worry, I will not discuss in detail on what is Industry 4.0 because it is already mentioned by Agi very well during the opening of this session that Industrial Revolution 4.0 has changed us the way we work, the way we study, etc. So could you please slideshow? And then next slide. Yep, slideshow. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay, so one of the impact of Industry 4.0 is that we need to prepare our society to be ready for Society 5.0. Now we have talked about this digital transformation for the last 5-10 years, but then it suddenly happened 2 years ago when we have COVID-19 in our country. Because since March 2020, we send our students home, we do our activities from home, and all of those activities, we use what we call digital technology. Next, luckily in Indonesia, before we entering the pandemic era, COVID-19, we have already got several startups already operated in Indonesia. So to some extent, we have entered partially what we call Society 5.0. So although we cannot go outside, although we are actually under quarantine, etc., due to pandemic, we can still do activities such as buying food or sending and receiving documents, etc., or any other activities, shopping, etc., using this digital technology. So because of this, part of Indonesia is actually since they are actually already entering what we call the Society 5.0, the impact of the pandemic, we can still do our activities. Next. Now, this is the current profile of the Indonesia that we have more than 270 millions, but as you can see that the number of mobile phones used in Indonesia is actually more than our population, 125%. This indicates that some people in Indonesia are actually having more than one mobile phone, but as you can see that the number of internet users in Indonesia are still only 200 millions, which is actually around 73.7% of our population. Next slide. However, although actually we have reached around 70% of our population getting the internet access, but still around 76% of the internet users in Indonesia are still located in Java and Sumatra Island. So we still do have what we call the digital divide, and we have still challenges to outreach to getting the internet to our people in Kalimantan or in Sulawesi and also in Papua. Next slide. However, in August 2020, our President Jokowi mentioned that we need to take advantage of this pandemic COVID-19 as a momentum to accelerate the digital transformation. And he has indicated that there are 5 things that we need to do. And one of it is actually we need to build the roadmap of our digital transformation. And then we also need to fasten the integration of the national data center. And we also need to prepare the digital talent needs in Indonesia. Next slide. So because of that, the Ministry of CIT currently preparing what we call the Roadmap of Indonesia Digital Nation 2021 until 2024. So it's going to be long to explain each of the column here, but in summary, there are three things that we need to prepare, that we need to transform. The first one is actually the government. We need to make it to be digital government. The next one is actually the society. So we need to create what we call digital society or develop digital society. And the next one is actually the digital economy. As you know that Indonesia is actually the 5th largest economy in the world. So we are actually the center of the startup or the center of internet economy, especially in Southeast Asia and also in Asia. So people talk that in the next several years, Indonesia will be one of the tiger of Asia. So we need to prepare for that. Next slide. So in terms of government, we need to develop what we call the e-government as indication of the transformation in the government aspect. And then for the economy, we need to develop our digital economy. And then for the society, we need to transform them to be a knowledge-based society. Next slide. To do that, the government cannot do it alone. So it has to be partnering with other stakeholders such as academia and also private sector, civil society, and also technical community. And all those initiatives must be based on the national interests of Indonesia so that the digital transformation in Indonesia will be able to achieve the goals of our nation as mentioned in the national interest in our constitution. Next slide. Now, because of that, the Ministry of CIT currently preparing several local governments as part of the national initiative called 100 Smart Cities. So for your information, at the moment, I'm currently in Purworejo Regency, one of the regency in Central Java, only 1 hour from Yogyakarta. The theme of the current conference, this SARBICA conference, actually preparing them to develop a master plan for smart city in Purworejo Regency. But actually, this regency is actually one of hundreds smart cities that are currently being prepared to be one of the smart city in Indonesia. Next slide. Now, when we develop the master plan for the smart city, we ask them to take a look from 6 aspects or 6 dimensions. The first one is actually from the smart governance aspect of view. And then the second one is how to develop their brand as part of the smart branding. The third one is actually to develop their economy as part of the smart economy. And then the fourth one is actually smart living in terms of health, mobility, and harmony, etc. The fifth one is actually smart society in terms of the community, education, security, and then the last one is actually on smart environment, which actually one of the problem that we face in the metropolitan city, and that also must be tackled under the smart city program. Next slide. So one of the goals is actually when we have the smart city, when we have the integration of information under the smart city program, then hopefully we can display all of this information on their command center, because what happened now is that hundreds of regency, hundreds of cities in Indonesia, they are actually currently developed command center combining the spatial information, combining the Internet of Things, combining the artificial intelligence mentioned by Antea Sales, and also 5G and also big data. So by having the integration under the Smart City program, hopefully that all those information can be displayed on their command center, and then will help their leaders to make decision to make the citizen prosper and happy. Next slide. Now, in terms of digital society, what happened in Indonesia right now is that we are actually deficit 9 million digital talent. So, and in Indonesia, in each year, we need about 600,000 digital talents. Unfortunately, unfortunately, if we combine all universities in Indonesia, the number of the graduates related to IT or related to digital technology are actually only around 300,000, which is so actually every year we're actually a deficit about 300,000 digital talent, which is why the Ministry of CIT, Communication and Information Technology, come up with digital talent development framework. So the minister actually, it is a national initiative as well, educate the people based on 3 levels. The basic level is about the digital literacy, and then we have the intermediate digital skill under what they call digital talent scholarship, cooperate with also several universities. And for the advanced digital skill, they have developed what they call Digital Leadership Academy. So by having this framework, we hope that we can reduce the gaps of having the deficit of digital talent in Indonesia. Next slide. Now for the digital literacy, because this one is actually also important due to so many hoax, so many fake news, etc., that can also disintegrate our nation. We educate people under the digital literacy program. We educate them on 4 pillars. The first one is actually the digital skill. And then the next one is about the digital culture. The third one is about the digital ethics. And then the last one is actually digital safety. So by having these 4 pillars under the curriculum for the digital literacy, we hope that our people will have their skills on the digital literacy, and we hope that they will use or follow ethics on the usage of digital, and also we can protect them under the digital safety, and we hope that we will create a positive culture under the digital culture program. Next slide. Now, however, as mentioned before, that we still have problem with the infrastructure. In 2019, 14th of October, we have launched or we have finished developed what we call Palaparing. It is actually the internet backbone of Indonesia, connecting from Sabang to Merauke, connecting the west part, the east part, the north part, and the south part of Indonesia, fiber optic. So hopefully we can provide a broadband connection across Indonesia. And it has finished 2 years ago in 2019, and now actually several internet service providers are actually working very hard solving what we call the last mile problem, connecting the fiber optic or the undersea cable to home, to school, or to buildings, etc. And also at the moment we are currently develop what we call the National Data Center. And the National Data Center will hopefully in the future will host several generic applications. As mentioned that the government Indonesia have decided that the generic application for the archive is actually named Srikandi, developed by the National Archive of Indonesia. And in the future, at the moment it is actually the generic application, and we do hope that by having this generic application hosted in the National Data Center of Indonesia, then all government agencies in Indonesia will use that application. So that when we talk about the integration, when we talk about the interoperability, it will be automatically solved when all the government agencies use the generic application called Srikandi, developed by the National Archive of Indonesia. Next slide. As for the digital, this is actually the picture of the National Data Center currently being built. Next slide. So the digital, from the digital economy aspect of view, we have started since the 2016 national initiative named 1,000 digital startup, and in 2017 we have the national program on Next Indonesia Unicorn, and since last year we have the national initiative called Startups to the Indonesia. And yes, we are actually experiencing the deficit on digital talent, which is why there are so many national and international competition which always follow. And I regularly become the judge of those programs, such as the National ICT Competition Identic, and also the ASEAN ICT Awards at the ASEAN levels. Next slide. So these are actually what happened in Indonesia right now under what we call the digital transformation to build the Indonesia Digital Nation 2021-2024. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you very much. Back to Eki.
Thank you very much, Professor Yudo, for very insightful and informative presentations. I highlighted several points, very interesting. Well, the mobile phone user is more than the number of our population. That's very interesting. So, and also we have more than 70% of internet penetrations. However, on the other hand, we're still facing the digital gap amongst our people. So yeah, I hope we can work on that in the future. Once again, thank you very much, Professor Yudo. Now we are moving on to the second panelist, which is Mrs. E. Gema from Republic of Korea. Mrs. E, can you hear me? 안녕하세요. Yeah, Mrs. E, can you hear me?
Yes, you can hear us.
Yep. Thank you very much, Mrs. E. Gema, Secretary of National Archive of Korea. Once again, I'm very happy and honored to have a discussion with you. Well, Mrs. E, before we begin, please allow me to give a bit of introductions of yourself. Mrs. E. Gema earned her PhD in Library and Information Science from Sokkmyung Women University. And also for this session, she's going to introduce the National Archives of Korea's digital records innovations, direction, as well as interesting cases and efforts for better improvement. Mrs. E, are you ready?
Okay.
Yeah, you have 15 minutes to share your experiences and ideas. The screen is yours.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gemma Lee from National Archives of Korea. I'm so happy to address this presentation for the meaningful SARBICA International Seminar. I'm intensively involved in digital records innovation. Today, I will introduce our digital innovation directions as well as interesting cases and efforts for the better improvement. I'm going to talk about with the 4 sections. First is about the context of digital innovation, and the second is core cases. I will deliver main issues and several interesting examples. Next, I will talk about what the final innovation directions are we want to accomplish. Lastly, I will introduce further planning, mainly on how we will implement. I'd like to start by giving you a bit of background of the innovation. The digital society has rapidly grown up, posing a great threat to digital records management. At the same time, we have faced with considerable challenges due to the first industrial revolution technology all over the world. As a result, we need to carry inevitable changes in the records management aligning with the digital transformation. Also, as the digital society goes on, the public demands for record service of government activities have been considerably increased. Now, let me address 5 core tasks for the innovation. First, we need to seek the management methods particularly suitable for digital attribution beyond document type records. Next, we devise methods for managing data set as records because most digital records been created and managed in information systems treated as data or data sets. We are also trying to apply new technologies to promote digital transformation from the analog records regime. On the other hand, we are seeking to establish a flexible strategy for digital preservation. Lastly, we want to intensify the continuous training and digital literacy and the code of ethics for professionals. On this page, I will address each core task in more detail. First one is to find new ways for digital records. For the new digital process, we will reflect the unique attributes of digital information. As with analog records, we should identify digital records to be documented, and among them, select very few records with national value. As a default method, we will permit most of the digital records to be maintained in each agency, not to the record center, until the records would be transferred to archives. For this process, we are especially concerned about the appraisal and selection policy before creating records, and particularly the metadata capture of new digital records, such as website, social network services, and so on. We will carry a selective transfer to archives only for very important records. Second is to find new ways for data sets. A new data set management differs from the general process. It will reflect unique attributes of data sets. First of all, we will select information systems to be documented and identify data sets in these systems. Next, we will monitor data set life cycle in each agency's information system by using dataset record schedule. The schedule particularly consists of information on mandate, system, and data, besides business or records. Most of all, physical transfer is not required. Just we can maintain data sets in each agency until the systems are disposed or replaced. As I said, only for very few data sets with a national value, we will carry a selective transfer to archives. Next, we are trying to apply new technologies for digital transformation. First is a transition to cloud. Many systems in my archives and central government record management systems were moved into the National Government Cloud Center. Actually, we have 3-tier systems labeling as records creation, management, and archives management. However, in the cloud, we need no physical transfer. Just share the storage with records creation systems and management systems. So we can minimize data loss during physical transfer between systems. I will say more the next page. To reduce mass repetition work and to provide intelligence service, we experimented with artificial intelligence technology based on building the learning data from the records management process. A representative one is the OCR experiments. OCR to digitize the documents showed quite good results in Korean documents. You can raise the rate of text recognition and expand the number of paper documents enabling text search. We are doing more tests to raise recognition rates. On top of that, we are trying to apply blockchain as a new technology to ensure the authenticity and integrity of digital records instead of a digital signature. This is an example of a transfer in the cloud. We adopt ISO 16175 Part 1, Configuration Optional Model 2. It shares digital files, just transfer metadata. Also maximize record control to business systems. A few years ago, all digital files required yearly transfer. However, in the cloud, the storage of two systems are being integrated, and the digital files are shared between systems without physical transfer. Therefore, we can simplify transfer process and save the storage space at any more occurring events. This is an example of the OCR results for typewritten or handwritten documents in Korean. It showed 80 to 90% of accuracy rates based on the deep learning model. Characters in the scanned image of TIFF files can be recognized as text, and output documents are saved as XML or PDF files, and then we can correct the errors and modify the contents. Eventually, we can provide text search in the contents of the paper documents. Next is to seek flexibility in digital preservation. Until now, we decided PDF/A-1 as only one preservation format. However, now we would like to expand the kinds of preservation format with technology advances. Thus, we will provide the selection criteria for the preservation format. The criteria have common attributes such as openness, interoperability, safe documentation, and so on. It will be extended to any other formats to meet the criteria. For the purpose of the implementation, we are offering the digital format registry and providing risk evaluation of certain formats. In a few months, we will provide a format information service to archives, agencies, and the public. On top of that, we restructured the long-term preservation format with technical flexibility. We renamed that as a long-term preservation package and permit various package type against the only one XML formatted package. This is the web page of the digital format registry system. It is a watchdog for a long-term preservation strategy against deterioration of file format technology. We have technical information, a total of 354 file formats. It is devised to notify the risky file formats and recommend the acceptable formats for digital preservation. We expect it to lead records creators to use acceptable file formats at the stage of records creation to reduce preservation cost and enhance digital representation in the future. I will show more details in the next page. Digital records, by their nature, rely heavily on technologies. They may become unreadable or listed altogether without a comparable file format or a software capable of reading the files. For this reason, it is imperative to collect technical information such as format version, extension, and software of the file formats. We also use this information to check and verify damaged files when transferring digital records, or to use them as decision-making tools for preservation and processing of formats at any risk of preservation. We expect it will be a foundation for the long-term preservation strategy for digital records. Besides any technical attempts, we are doing our efforts to promote digital capability. thus sharing the world's related technical trends to improve digital literacy. And we are developing online education contents to respond to the COVID pandemic, and especially planning to provide various digital records education programs according to targeted user levels. Also, we urge to comply Code of Ethics in digital office and continuously reinforce new digital experts and manpowers. The final directions we are aiming for is to enable a sustainable response to the evolving digital society and to provide a new archive service through successful transition to a new digital regime. In turn, it will increase the independence and professionality in records in archives area. Another direction is to strengthen communication with the world's records partners to cooperate with each other for digital records issues. Now, let me talk about further planning for implementing the innovation. In a few months, we will establish and announce the digital strategy, and we will organize these detailed tasks in line with the goals and directions of innovation. And we will coordinate a timetable for the practical action plan and perform and check the actions according to the roadmap. The first action is to revise the associated regulations for actual implementation in the field. Lastly, we will hear any opinions from the fields and seek the continuous improvement. That's all I prepared. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Igema, for your sharing. It was a very informative presentation about technical experiences from the NA case, how to utilize and adopt the technology into the archive management. Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Igema. Please stay with us. We still have more to go. Well, distinguished participants of the international webinar, now we are moving on to the next panelist. We will have a person who will going to share from the Australia perspective on how to utilize technological advancements to archive management. We have Mr. Stephen Fox. Stephen? Hello, Stephen. A very good afternoon from Jakarta. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon. I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us today. So before we begin, please allow me to give a brief introduction about you. So Stephen Fox is Assistant Director for Collection Management, National Archive of Australia. So prior to joining the National Archive in 2020, Stephen held senior executive positions at the Museums of Transport and Technology in Auckland, New Zealand. And also, during his service, he is responsible for identifying, storing, digitizing, preserving, and making accessible to most significant Australian government records. So his contributions, we can talk about a lot of his contribution. Could spend all day to talk about his achievements and contribution. Stephen, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thanks, Eggy.
Yeah, you have 15 minutes to share your ideas and experiences. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, selamat siang and good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge that I am coming to you from the country of the First Nations people of Ngambri and Ngunnawal here in Canberra in Australia, and I would like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to thank the National Archives of the Republic of Indonesia for hosting this event, and of course the invitation from the SARBICA board for the National Archives of Australia to talk today about the interesting and topical issue of digitisation and preservation in our collections. So today I'll talk about the challenges and opportunities in our activities that we undertake in terms of digitisation for preservation, but particularly related to our at-risk records. So I'll just quickly give you some background around the National Archives, our purpose and our collection. So our vision is Australia's cultural identity and democracy is strengthened by connecting people with the evidence of Australian government activities and decisions. And so the National Archives of Australia is the federal agency that collects records of Australian government decisions and actions as evidence. We do this to connect Australians with the nation's memory, their identity and history. Our functions are legislated under the Archives Act of 1983, and we preserve records and encourage their use, and we also promote good records management by Australian government agencies, because without that, we wouldn't have many records to preserve, or good records to preserve for that matter. So a little bit about the collection. So the collection is around about 40 million items, and 7.5% of that collection is digitised. There's 22.3 million photographic items. Many of these are at risk, and about 18% of these are digitised. There's 200,000 containers of motion picture film. Most of that is acetate film. Most of those records are at risk as well. And there are 270,000 magnetic tape audio-visual items. And we're talking about audio recordings, film sound, as well as video recordings in that space. And about 40 to 45% have been digitised. And in the digital space, there's 4.5 petabytes of data, which is currently stored in our digital archive. That is growing, and it's growing fast. So the records at risk that we'll talk about today. There's multiple formats in our collection that we consider to be records at risk. They include photographic records, so often nitrate or acetate negatives, which are degrading slowly. Motion picture film, as I mentioned, acetate film, so vinegar syndrome, the separation of the film from the stock base. Magnetic tape audio-visual records are at risk due to not only degradation, but of course technical obsolescence. So under the deadline 2025 call for action is a common source of interest for the archival community. And paper records are at risk as well. So large format colonial records that really shouldn't be handled, really, and that puts them at risk. So thinking about some of the challenges for us and our records at risk, which records at risk do we prioritise? And we need to, when we're talking about a collection the size we're talking about, we need big numbers. We need to digitise at scale. And how do we do that? And what are the standards that we set for preservation? Because we really, again, with big numbers, we only want to be touching our collection as few times as possible. So we want to get the best possible preservation outcome from our digitisation activities. And what do we need to do or change to provide access to our records now they're being digitised? And how does that access happen in the digital context? So we prioritise our records based on a matrix of criteria, which includes format and the inherent stability and longevity or otherwise of that format, the significance of the records, historic considerations, such as how the records have been stored and used previously, the availability of technology to read the record. So again, this is technological obsolescence is an important consideration. And finally, the uniqueness of the records. These criteria are a foundation of our national digitisation strategy for our collections, because our collection is distributed across Australia. So multiple strategies are required when we're tackling these big collections, distributed collections, and large numbers of collections. So the first is about our storage and how we approach passive preservation. And so, as the slide says there, we look at temperature-controlled storage, so cool, cold, and freezer storage to slow deterioration and extend the lifespan of material so we can extend the amount of time we have to do the work. And this is our key strategy with motion picture film and arresting the advancement of vinegar syndrome for acetate material. The second is outsourcing digitisation models. So this is about using industry partners to digitise large numbers of records at risk so we can do more, digitise more in the same amount of time. We also then think about the third option, which is in effect outsourcing the outsourcing, which is getting our government agencies here in the Australian government to do the digitisation. So we have a general records authorities and we encourage agencies under those record authorities to run their own digitisation projects and then deposit the digital copies with us rather than the originals. The only exception in this space is motion picture film. We like to take the original as well as the digitised copy. Fourth, we continuously expand our own capabilities. So this is building internal capability and capacity to digitise. And it's about replacing equipment, being more efficient with equipment, building the extra studios, the extra requirements and fit outs, as well as building staff capability and skills. With technological obsolescence comes the loss of skills, and we have to capture those skills and build that in our younger teams. Fifth, with all this digitising, we need to expand our digital storage. Store more digitally and store more digitised records. And finally, we collaborate. We have funds are limited, resources are limited. The task is big. We need to make sure we're not duplicating efforts. So we work with our national broadcasters here in Australia, so the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and Special Broadcasting Service, about their digitisation priorities, about their activities, and we run procurement projects together so that we know what's going on, what's being digitised, where it's being digitised, and how it's being stored. So we work together to be efficient with our limited resources and find opportunities to share the load. We also, thinking about all this digitisation work, we have to set standards. We have to set a high standard, a high preservation standard for our digitisation activities for all formats. So these are the digital file formats that we produce in-house and that we expect from our depositors to ensure archival quality and consistency for long-term preservation. This is an extract from our website, and our standards are available on our website. And you can see there are standards under each of those tabs for paper documents under A3, large format paper documents over A3, bound volumes, photographic prints and negatives, aerial film and photographs, X-ray film, microforms, audio formats, video formats, and motion picture film. And each have a set of standards for preservation and for access. All our industry partners who undertake digitisation of National Archives records are contracted to meet these standards too. So when we have bulk digitisation done, that bulk digitisation is done to meet our preservation standards. National Archives staff quality check by sampling digital files received from those providers before we ingest the files into our digital archive, ensuring that quality standards are met. With regard to our audio and video standards, like many other institutions, these are based on the International Association of Sound and Audiovisual Archives and their TCO4 and TCO6 guidelines. And our motion picture film standards are based on what we can achieve with our scanners, with our high quality film scanners, balanced with what we think is appropriate for the source material. And we also take guidance and inspiration from the work done at institutions such as NARA in the US, who have a wealth of information published on their website about their standards. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the magnetic tape and the audiovisual challenges with our records at risk, because they're very topical for us, as they are for many archives at the moment, with the deadline 2025 call to action around magnetic tape records at risk. So we posed a question before about how we scale up our capacity and capability. So for us, a major issue in this space has been finding ways to digitise multiple streams of records at risk. And remembering that with a lot of the magnetic tape material, it is one for one. So if you have a 1 hour tape, it takes an hour to digitize that, plus load it and offload it. So it takes a long time. So the more streams we have running, the more efficient we can be and the more records at risk we can preserve through digitization. So we have a video decks located in our AV preservation labs, and we've just recently replaced those to double our production through those units. So internally we can start to produce more and more digitized magnetic tape records. And expanding our capabilities about identifying how you can digitize all the formats in the collection as well. And so one example for us is that we have a large optical negative sound collection, many of which are copies of original magnetic film final mixes, and these are extremely deteriorated. So by acquiring this capability around the optical negative sound digitization, we're able to ensure we can capture this format, and the turnaround time is shorter, and we no longer need to spend days working on deteriorated magnetic film. We also have built new studios to increase output for our film sound and film digitization. And we're also developing and cross-skilling our staff. So instead of staff doing one task in a workflow, they're being trained to do end-to-end processes through that whole digitization workflow. And as we've just been hearing from several speakers, engaging with the technology sector to investigate artificial intelligence for record sentencing and particularly selection of mass-born digital records. I just wanted to share this diagram just as an indicator of the thought processes and complexity of the tasks at hand when we talk about digitization. So this is a workflow diagram developed for our outsourcing of magnetic tape digitization. And the digitization act itself are those two grey boxes in the middle of the screen. That's the digitization work. But of course, as you can see from this diagram, there is an awful amount of work that goes on around that process, whether it's from the initial selection of the items, any preparation that needs to be taken around the items, any shipping and transportation, receipt, back, quality control, as I've mentioned, and then accessioning and ingesting into our digital archive. The process is complex, but it's a very clear process. And this, you can see that this tasks are broken down based on teams. You can see that the team names are down the left-hand side, and you can see the tasks across the right. And so we can see where the interdependencies also lie in these digitization processes. Documenting our workflow in this way has proven to be a valuable tool in communicating the true work and cost of digitization. As I say, it's a complex and time-consuming issue, but it also brings different teams together and shows them how their piece of the work fits into the overall puzzle. I'd just like to talk about our digital archive. I think it's worth just touching base on that. We're doing all this digitization, and where's it going? It's going into our digital archive. So our digital archive is an object store. It's replicated between two sites. It's a Hitachi 3-tier system, which utilizes flash and spinning disk storage. It's worth noting that our third tier, tier 3, has no compression. So all our preservation digitization files go onto the third tier because there's no compression on those files at all. The important thing too is it's scalable, because we know that this is a growing space. We're digitizing more and more material. We're digitizing audio-visual material, which is very data hungry. So having a scalable storage system is really important. Our third copy, or our preservation backup, is on LTO8 tape library. So we use an LTO tape robot with 4 drives as our preservation backup system. But the important point is that last stop point. We are always watching and investigating what the best digital storage strategies are moving forward. It's a changing space, and we're looking at options, whether that be cloud, whether that be on-premise, whether that be data centers, whether that be a hybrid of those, and thinking about that, of course, in the context of the broader Australian government policy in terms of what our digital archive should look like. In the last few minutes I just wanted to talk about the practical, how we do this in practice, or how we're doing this in practice. We've talked a lot about what the issues are. And I want to talk about this Defend the Past, Protect the Future, which was a recent announcement by the Australian government, the funding to the National Archives. Gratefully received funding to the National Archives, which will allow us to do many things we've just been talking about. It will allow us to focus on digitising our records at risk, magnetic tape, nitrate and acetate, motion film and photographic film, and paper records. Very pleasingly, this new funding will allow us to digitise all our magnetic tape records at risk, 100% digitised. Those records that we have in our collection will be digitised for preservation, which will be a significant outcome, and it will happen right on the deadline, 2025 deadline. It also allows us to build that capability in-house to do digitisation, undertake digitisation across our network of offices and resources throughout Australia. And it also allows us to build large-scale digitisation capacity in a new facility that we will shortly be operating from January next year, which is our major digitisation hub, which will allow large-scale bulk digitisation of paper records at risk. So we will be significantly increasing our digitisation activities and ultimately access to our collection material. The funding also allows us, of course, to evolve our digital archive. With that much digitisation happening, it's another 5 petabytes of expansion for our digital archive, and ensure that our cybersecurity posture is appropriate, given that we are the holder of the government record for Australia. It's also building capability in terms of information, so working with government agencies here in Australia, Australian government agencies, to ensure best practice information management occurs and increases our capability in access examination and declassification to help clear backlogs in that area. I just wanted to close on this quote from a distinguished jurist, Australian jurist, Justice Michael Kirby. And he says of the National Archives, the democratic function of the NAA is holding up a mirror to the people of Australia based on the availability of records deposited within the National Archives. And with this approach, this large-scale digitisation approach of our records at risk, we will certainly be having more material to be held up to that mirror for the people of Australia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for sharing the Australian experiences in managing the archive. I personally like the term that defend the past and protect the future. That's a very good one. Once again, thank you very much for sharing. Distinguished participants, so far we already heard the experiences from Korea and also Australia as well as Indonesia. Now, last but not least, we have the final panelist who's going to share the way he managed the archive and also utilizing the technological advancements in archive management. We have Mr. Jafar Sidek, Director General, National Archive of Malaysia.
Hi.
A very good afternoon from Jakarta, Indonesia. But unfortunately, Mr. Jafar Sidek couldn't join us today. But on behalf of Mr. Jafar Sidek, we have Mrs. Hafiza Osman. Mrs. Hafiza, Assalamualaikum. Can you hear me?
Waalaikumsalam, Mr. Moderator. Loud and clear. Thank you.
So we can wait to hear your presentation about Malaysia experiences in utilizing technological advancements for archive management. So you have 15 minutes, Mr. Hafiza. The screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. So first of all, I would like to express apology on behalf of my Director General, Mr. Jafar, for he couldn't make it due to unavoidable circumstances in last minute. So first of all, let me thank you on behalf of National Archive of Malaysia for inviting National Archive of Malaysia to share our experience in development and implementation of digital document management system in Malaysian public sector particularly. So in this presentation, I would like to share on the early intervention of National Archive of Malaysia in ERMS, or Electronic Record Management, or Digital Document Management System. What is the issues that bring along the development and the implementation, the benefit of the ERMS, the chronological development of ERMS, and what is our role in developing DDMS, or Digital Document Management System, and what is the critical success factor and future opportunities for ASEAN particularly. So as an introduction, let me share how we come to this part or this level of development. This is in 1997 when Malaysian government introduced e-government or electronic government through multimedia super corridor. This initiative has opened up a new chapter in record management in Malaysia, where tremendous changes start on 4th of July 2011 through the National Key Economic Areas, or NKEA, steering committee, where they agreed to implement the electronic record management system, which later on we call it as Digital Document Management System, or DDMS, under Entry Point Project e-Government Towards Paperless Government. Sorry, I didn't share my slide. Apology for that. Okay. What is the objective of implementation of digital document management system is to centralize government-wide electronic record management system in Malaysia public sector particularly, and to develop an effective and efficient electronic records management system, as well as improve the efficiency of access to information and transparency in administration, increase control over government official record, and to develop a comprehensive so-called record management system that covers a life cycle of records from creation up to disposal. So this is the early intervention by National Archive of Malaysia in development of digital document management system, where we establish an electronic record management division and section. We tend to recruit of archivists in IT background. So far, previously, it's only focused on field of history, heritage. But this time around, when the electronic records increase, the usage of the electronic document has been increased. So we tend to recruit more archivists in IT background, and as well as development of expertise and officers on technical matters. And this is quite a big transformation in record management, particularly in National Archive of Malaysia, where we develop e-SPARK, we call it SPARK, e-strategy for preservation of government records and archive, and as well as preliminary study on best practice from Australia, United Kingdom, US, South Korea, Canada, and other countries. And also we engage panel of international advisors on ERMS that advise us on development of policies, procedures, and standards, and so on. So the eSPARK project phase 1, we develop tools and guidelines in electronic record. As you can see from here, there's quite a lot of guidelines that have been developed or established to help us to develop the system, as well as a guideline for electronic or digital document management system. So as for eSpark Phase 2, we develop or we establish a system for electronic record management to manage the whole life cycle of electronic records, and as well as archival management system, which provide storage space for digital records and its metadata based on Open Archival Information System, or OAIS. So this is the record management issues that bring about the development and the implementation of electronic record management system, which is the records to sustain the records and to shorten the longer retrieval time due to misplaced or conventional way or method of retrieval, and also the issues of increasing of storage space. So this is when we introduce electronic record management system, it could help solve the storage space problem, and as well as loss of institutional memory due to misplaced or inappropriate storage or retrieval record management system. And because of the high usage of paper, so we turn to electronic records. So what benefit do we gain from implementing or developing this electronic record is we manage to control on content, structure and records. So this is more secure system where users could not or are unable to amend record which has been captured in the system. And this system can share, among users, we can share information, and also solve the space saving and supporting ICT Green Initiative as well. And also we could preserve public sector institutional memory, and as well as promote the service transparency of the Malaysian government sector and fast access of the records. So those are the benefits that can be gained through development and implementation of so-called ERMS. So as in Malaysia, National Archive of Malaysia is the lead agency for the development of an electronic records management system. And we start on 4th February 2008, where we use Stream Context as a electronic record management system. So this is the chronological development of electronic record management in Malaysian public sector, where GOE, EGDMS, but this system is only cater of capturing of record, but it doesn't has the retention schedule features in it. So in 1999, it was introduced. There is Generic Office Environment Electronic Government Document Management System, or GOE EGDMS, so-called, was introduced in 1999 and been used by 22 agencies up to 2008. And in 2012, National Archive of Malaysia with a strategic partner established or developed DDMS, or Digital Document Management System, in 2012 until 2016, and further enhanced in 2016 with DDMS 2.0 with many more features, where 250 government agencies in Malaysia has been using this system with 65,707 users. So this is where National Archive of Malaysia play its role in implementation of a digital document management system. First of all, the adoption of ISO 15489 into Malaysian standard 2223 2009, Part 1 and Part 2, Information Documentation, Record Management, and the guidelines. And also the development of DDMS is a strategic partnership between National Archive of Malaysia and Malaysian Administration Modernization Planning Unit, or we call it MAMPU, National Archive of Malaysia in charge of developing or produce the guides on the regulatory and legal matters pertaining to record management. And also we create a cadre archivist post, which we position them in the public sector to help implement the digital document management system. As well, we appoint the departmental record managers in public sectors to help create awareness among the users in the Malaysian public sectors. And DDMS has been implemented in 25 ministries and federal central agencies so far. The main role of the National Archive of Malaysia in record management is preparation of prerequisite to implement DDMS, which is file classification plan, where we develop into two types of classification plan, which is housekeeping and functional records. So the housekeeping, we divide it into 5 categories, and functional depends on the function of the agencies or public sectors, and as well as records retention schedule, as both file classification plan and record retention schedule are prerequisite for the implementation or development of DDMS in public sectors. And another role that National Archive of Malaysia play is the creating or establish a task force towards development of FCP in public sector agencies, because we have more than 1,000 sector agencies, public sector agencies. So we develop a task force to cater this requirement of prerequisite. And also we train staff to gain a common understanding approach, and also we do conduct workshop with ministries to help them to develop both prerequisite on DDMS. So this is the strategic partner of National Archive of Malaysia. We have a Malaysian Administrative Modernization and Management Planning Unit, which in charge of system development and technical support, and we, the National Archive of Malaysia, as the subject matter expert on record management, as well as Chief of Government Security Officer as the SME on classified records requirement, and also Malaysian Standard Department and SURIM in the development and adoption of international standard on record management and archive. So this is the basically the system design of DDMS, which comply to the National Archive Act and Service Circular number 5 created in 2007, and as well as MS ISO 16175. So this system is a centralized cloud computing system and can be accessed 24/7. It uses one GovNet, internet, and as well as mobile, and it caters open document and official secret document as well. So this is a business process of the system. As we can see, agency will create different types of records and being captured into the system or secure cloud server in many format or many types of records, and can be retrieved, put into classification, and can be retrieved whether through download to PC or print out or send by email, and export disposition files which is have the value or according to retention schedule to the National Archive of Malaysia. So this is basically the technology being used in developing the DGMS or Digital Document Management System with high availability architecture, with a disaster recovery center, real-time data replication, and also the cloud storage. So So this is, I'll share also the uniqueness of this system where it complies to National Archive Act, as I mentioned just now, and it is a centralized repository with multi-tenant platform. It is a secured government network, high availability architecture with the disaster recovery center. So it secured the document or the record that been transferred and been captured in it. It is a trendsetter where single system cater for government records management system. So this is the innovation of the system. Technology, multi-tenant and tier application architecture, notification by email, Microsoft Office, Outlook add-ins, and it is a agile methodology. So it creates a significant cost saving, very user-oriented. It's a transformation of government records management and easy to implement the system. Okay, so this is the status of implementation and way forward for public sector. So basically 253 agencies have been using the system with 117 federal agencies, 114 federal statutory bodies, and so on. So we forecast that into 2025, basically 500 agencies will be using this system. With currently about 7 million records has been captured into the system, with 65,000 registered users, and we expect 100 registered users in 2025. So this is the capacity planning until 2025. So this is the record management end-to-end, the additional features that we expect to have in DGMS 2.0 phase 3 with digital signature in compliance with the Digital Signature Act 1997. It can be inter-agencies transaction. The record can be transferred through online from one agency to agency in the system we call GTMS, and can be developed or used mobile as a mobile apps, and we have a dedicated GTMS portal. So what is the critical success factor in development and implementation of this DGMS or electronic record management system is the government initiative at the entry point project, where e-government towards paperless government initiative has helped us in funding and centralized storage, and the adoption of 268 functional requirement of Malaysian Standard ISO 16175, and it been adopted and adapted in the development of DDMS, and total adoption, as I mentioned just now, of 15489, and the prerequisite of implementation, file classification plan, as well as record retention schedule, and guidelines for implementation of digital document management system, open and classified. This is among the critical factors that contribute to the implementation of GDMS in Malaysian public sector. And we also organize an awareness workshop for public sector, enhancement workshop for users that have been used the public sector, the GDMS, and we also organize a change management program for public sector to understand further on the implementation of the GDMS, and we also help users by establishment of GDMS help desk, and we also did the audit and monitoring on implementation of GDMS in public sector. And we hope to upgrade the DGMS 2.0 to phase 3 with several features and capabilities. And this system has been gained the international recognition, international by the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, the summit the World Summit on the Information Society in 2020. So in summary, it is a government-wide centralized electronic management system. It has been implemented in 253 government agencies, including all ministries. It complies with ISO 16175 and as well as ISO 15489. It is a transformation to digital workplace, wider applicability, and also management of both official classified records and open records. It is a cost-saving government funding, where government funding and centralized storage has been developed, and it is a hope. We hope one day we can share technical assistance or technical sharing with Asian archival institution in the future. So last but not least, I would like to share future opportunities. So this DDMS will be a local product developed in-house for standardization of record management in Malaysia. And we hope to create opportunities for ASEAN to develop ASEAN e-classification guidelines for electronic record management. And we also call Asian countries to explore more on DDMS for usage. And perhaps we can have exchange of archivists, especially in electronic record management, to share our experience, our expertise, and so forth, and standardization of ERMS guidelines in Asian countries. So with that, I thank you. And again, we call upon if any agencies or any country interested to share with us the experience of development and implementation of a digital document management system. We are here to have a sharing session and so forth. So thank you very much. I pass to Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hafizah, for sharing the Malaysia experiences from your presentations. We can get information about the historical background, milestone of archive management development in Malaysia, critical issues, critical success story, and also future projections of archive management. Once again, thank you very much, Mrs. Hafizah. Please stay tuned. We still have one more session today.
Thank you.
Well, distinguished participants and also speakers, we have completed all participants to deliver their ideas, experiences, and knowledge. Now we are moving on to the next sessions, the Q&A sessions. So if you have any questions, response, or ideas you would like to share, please feel free to write down on the chat box. Our team will select the questions and deliver to the designated panelists. And also a bit of information. The best question will get a surprise from the committee. So again, feel free to deliver a question. Do we have any questions today for the panelists from our beloved participants? We have hundreds of participants from nationally and also internationally. So do you have any questions so far? Yeah. So please stay with us for a moment while we're waiting for question. Well, we have. Yeah. Yeah, we're waiting for the questions to come up. I believe we have a lot of questions because the topic is very interesting, you know, about the technological advancements. We live our life with the technological development and advancement, so it is very important how we are be able to adopt the technological advancement for our benefit, to make our organization more efficient, effective, and also more secure when we providing services to the public. Any questions so far? We still have questions from participants. Maybe while we're waiting a question from participants, Professor Giri, Professor Yudo, are you still with me?
Yes, I'm here. So actually, Agi, I have answered some of the question in the Q&A.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So,
So I noticed that Stephen Fox has already answered some of the question on the Q&A as well. Yep.
Okay, Professor, thank you very much. I just got the questions from the committee. Okay. The first questions coming from Mrs. Tiara Desianti Raharja, an archivist from our newly Research and Innovation Agency, or BRIN. The question is addressed to Professor Yudogiri Sucahyo. The question is, what percentage of Indonesia readiness to transform from conventional to digital, especially for financial records? Indonesia should implement full digital or hybrid, conventional and digital, so that archives can be accessed anywhere and anytime according to the rights access. Thank you. So, Professor Yudo, do you have any response on that, please?
Thank you. So, we face two types of archives here, the conventional and digital. And for the last several decades, we have transformed from all conventional, and then we transform ourselves from transforming from conventional to digital, which is, in other words, still not born digital, born analog, and then convert to digital. And then at the moment, we are entering what we call born digital archive. So all of those, the conventional and digital, must be maintained very well by the National Archive and also by the archivists from each of the government agencies. And speaking of the readiness, what I can say that the digital transformation is a must. Whether we are ready or not, it's already there. So now it's just a matter of whether we can transform fast enough ourselves. And we cannot deny that. So either we are entering the hybrid, combining with the digital, full digital era, or we left behind. That's the current condition. So ready or not, we have to be ready. Yeah. And yes, we face several challenges like the digital divide problem, and all of us, including the Ministry of CIT, working very hard to provide the IT infrastructure. The National Cyber and Crypto Agency are currently working very hard to secure the information which we can obviously use to secure our archive. So it's just a matter of coordination and synergy among us to take advantage of each of the facility provided from each government agencies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Yudo. So ready or not, we have to be ready because it's already there. Everyone now changing, so we have to be ready on that. Thank you very much, Professor Yudo, for the response on the questions from Mrs. Tiara. Now, do we have another questions? Yeah, we are waiting for the next questions. We have a lot of questions. I think our committee a bit difficult to choose the questions. Well, the second questions from Mrs. Octavia Safarwati on archivist from Andri. The questions for Mrs. E. Gema from National Archives of Korea. Mrs. Igema, are you still with me?
Okay.
Yeah, the question.
Thank you for.
Yes, we have a question for you. Information technology transform rapidly nowadays. Will the cloud system be replaced by other systems? Based on your point of view, which record management system suits with the present technology? So there are actually two questions. So is there any future technology after cloud system, and also which record management system suits with the present technology? Do you have a response on that, Mrs. E, please?
Okay, thank you for your question. In South Korea, the cloud is one of the digital government policy. So our Korean government are building the cloud center all over our country. So I think the cloud system is one of the technology of the first and industrial revolution technology. So in the cloud, we can share easily. We can easily share the records information, and we can extract any data from the records, and then we use them as big data. So in the cloud, we can save the storage and enhance the record search and effective records management. So we select cloud system, but it depends on your country's situation. So I think best to suit for your situation. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mrs. Igema. Of course, there is no one size fits all. Each strategy, the problem might be the same, but the way a country responds is based on the country situation and context. That's very correct. Thank you very much, Mrs. Igema, for the response. And I think you missed one question. Do you think that in the future, the cloud system will be replaced by another system? What do you think based on your point of view?
클라우드 시스템이 미래에 다른 시스템이 될 것 같으니까 클라우드 시스템이 다른 시스템이 있는지.
Yes, of course. We don't know. We don't know any systems in the future will be occurred. So it is possible to replace the cloud system to any other systems, but we need to prepare to respond to the future technology. So.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have to be ready what will happen in the future. You know, whatever the situation, there will always a new technology will come up in the future. Once again, thank you very much, Mrs. Igema from South Korea. We will move into the next questions. Yeah, we have the third questions from Mr. Parno Nusantara to Stephen Fox. Stephen, are you here still with me?
I am indeed.
Yeah, we have questions for you. So
Excellent.
The question is, what is the strategy? Sorry. Yeah. So can you get? Please wait a moment for. So can you see the questions? We have a bit.
I can. I can see the question.
Yeah. Yes, please. Your response, please.
Sure, certainly. Yeah. Look, it's a great question, and thank you for the question. And you know, I guess there's a theme running through the question, isn't there? And that's about we are in a rapidly and changing environment. And so the answer is yes, we should always have a plan, but we should also be ready to put the plan down if things change, or modify the plan at least as things evolve. As I mentioned in my presentation, I mean, we are regularly reviewing and looking at what is happening in the space of digital storage. We currently use data centers, but in time we may move to the cloud, we may have both, we may still continue to run the tape libraries. I mean, you know, there's there's a lot of options there. But at the moment, in the Australian context, the cloud, from a collection perspective, is not at the right space for us in terms of cybersecurity. In terms of, we are very aware of the cyber risk that we have to be the keeper of the government record, and so that's also a factor to consider when we're planning and thinking about digital storage moving forward.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen, for sharing your ideas and responding towards the questions about risk on archive management. Well, we are moving on to the next questions. We have a lot of questions actually. I'm very happy to that. Yeah, shall we move to the next questions? I have, from my observation, we have more than 15 questions. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm very happy to see that, which means that the participants focus and following the whole sessions. Because yeah, do you have another questions? Any questions so far? Yeah, please wait for a moment. We have a bit technical difficulties here. Now it's heavy rain in Jakarta, so yeah, I hope the connection is good. Yeah. Well, we already have questions for Professor Yudo and also Mrs. Igema and also Stephen. Yeah, we have the 4th questions for Mrs. Hafiza. The question is, one of the benefit record management is information sharing, whereby record can be shared based on access control. What is access control do you mean? Is it shared from National Archives to archive user or user to users? Will it be possible for user to share archives they obtain from National Archive? Thank you. So, Mrs. Hafiza, you still with me? Ask the questions.
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Please, you respond.
Okay. So this system, it has the security features. We call it what I mentioned just now is the access control. I mean it by security features in the system, where we can control. I mean the integrity of the record. We can maintain integrity of record in terms of controlling the amendment or the additional information put inside the captured records. By this system has features of object lock, imprecise, and it has a special ID and user password for each of the users. So if any what we call tempted of downloading or try to amend the record that has been captured in the system, we can always trace through audit log. So that is what I mean by the features that that the DDMS has in access control.
Okay. Okay. So the one who has the access is only authorized person? Is there any someone will give authorizations before the user can access to the archive?
Yes, we have to determine the user role, whether it's end user or information workers who captured the record, or is it an administrator, or is it the record managers. So all these 4 determined role has the access, has limited access or dedicated access of on the system.
All right, thank you.
Each user has the unique identity, so that's the special features that we can trace whether if any amendment or what so forth.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing to us, Mrs. Hafiza Usman.
Thank you.
Yeah, do we still have any questions? Yeah, okay. Well, again, I think we already arrived at the finish line of our session today. We have completed all the presentations, discussions, sharing ideas and knowledge. The discussion is very fruitful. I hope today's panelists, today's session can improve and enhance your knowledge, especially in digital transformation for archive management. Well, my name is Egi Dilianda. I think I have completed my job. I wish you all stay healthy and safety amid this COVID-19 pandemics. Well, I would like to invite Mrs. Erika, our MC, to join me today. So, Mrs. Erika, I have completed my job, so I will hand it over to you now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Egi.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Leading the panel session and discussion
of
for
course.
today.
It's my honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And also thank you for all of the speakers and presenters for delivering their wonderful knowledge in this seminar. Let's give big applause to the 4 speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, next, provision of recommendation delivered by Hari Bawono.
Thank you, Erika. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Hari Bawono. Let me deliver the recommendation based on discussion today. First, ASEAN archival community should be responsive in contextualizing the latest digital technology into the ASEAN context. And second, ASEAN archival community should build a robust plan when implementing digital transformation in the record and archive administration field. Third, ASEAN archival community should regularly review when implementing digital transformation program for its sustainability. And finally, ASEAN archival community needs to build strong collaboration to make the digital transformation in the record and archive administration field well implemented. Therefore, it could bring a positive impact on other fields. Thank you.
Thank you, Hari Bawono. Ladies and gentlemen, selanjutnya pengumuman pemenang penanya terbaik dalam webinar hari ini sebanyak 3 orang. Dari sekian banyak pertanyaan telah dipilih 3 orang penanya terbaik yang berkesempatan untuk mendapatkan hadiah dari Arsip Nasional. 3 penanya terbaik tersebut adalah yang pertama, Nana Maulana dari Arsiparis Sekretariat Jenderal Dewan Perwakilan Rakyat Republik Indonesia. Untuk yang kedua, Tiara Desyanti Raharja dari Badan Riset Inovasi Nasional. Dan yang ketiga, Ali Imron, Pusdiklat Pusat Pelaporan Analisis dan Transaksi Keuangan. Selamat kami ucapkan kepada para pemenang yang terpilih sebagai pemenangnya terbaik dalam seminar hari ini. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the committee for the SARBICA International Seminar, I would like to invite all the distinguished participants to join the host closing remarks delivered by Acting Secretary General of National Archive of the Republic of Indonesia, Mrs. Rini Agustiani. Halo, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oke, Mrs. Rini.
Thank you.
Ya, silakan.
Erika. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore. Good afternoon. The Honorable Chairwoman of SARBICA and Director of National Archive of Singapore, Mrs. Julia C. Vice Chairman of SARBICA and Director General of the National Archive of Myanmar, Mr. Uyu San Min,
Executive Board members of SARBICA, Secretary General of International Council of Archives, Mrs. Antena Sale, our speaker and expert, Professor Yudogiri Sucahyo, MCom PhD from University of Indonesia, Mrs. Lee Gemma from Digital Record Innovation Division, National Archive of Korea, Mr. Stephen Fogg, Assistant Director for Collection Management at National Archive of Australia, and Mrs. Halpisa Usman, National Archive of Malaysia. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, praise to Allah, the God of Almighty, so that we could gather together in the ending of this SARBICA International Seminar, 22nd General Conference and 23rd Executive Board Meeting 2021 in this afternoon. For the last 3 days, we had already seen the opening ceremony, 3 international seminars, General Conference, and Executive Board meeting. This event shall also become a milestone in history of the organization because it was the first event of SARBICA that was conducted in the hybrid format in midst of pandemic COVID-19. The opening ceremony presented the atmosphere of Yogyakarta, which was an initially venue of the event. We hope that the audience could feel that we are in city with its special traditional culture. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, 3 international webinars that were conducted in the last 3 days with the topic of memory, pandemic, and technology were a very full forum. The respective of international, regional, and local with speakers and experts and had a very discussion on each theme. Every webinar also produced a recommendation that could become a concept for further development on archives and record management. We greatly hope that this webinar brought new knowledge and inspiration for all participants from all over the world. In this opportunity, I would also like to announce you that next year, Indonesia shall conduct an international seminar on disaster archives in 2022 in Aceh. This seminar shall involve speakers in disaster, archives, and other related fields of expertise. Thus, the kindly invite all member countries or SARBICA to join us in Aceh next year with the hope that pandemic is no longer existed. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the 22nd General Conference and 23rd Executive Board Meeting 2021 had also delivered several results, such as the election of the office bearer of SARBICA for the period 2021 to 2023, the next host of SARBICA Executive Board Meeting 2022. It also discussed other important issues like joint nomination for the inscription on the Memory of the World Register by SARBICA, technical assistance on disposal policies and procedure for member countries, and the continuing of the APARA program. In this opportunity, I would like to deliver my congratulations for Mrs. Julia C., Director of National Archive of Singapore, who is elected for the chairwoman of SARBICA for the period 2021 to 2022. I hope the SARBICA shall contribute more the benefit of the archival development in Southeast Asia and all over the world under your leadership. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the government of the Republic of Indonesia and Andri as the host, I would like to deliver my sincere apology for any inconvenience during the event. I greatly hope that all of you had a great experience for the last 3 days. I also would like to deliver my sincere thanks to all the committee members from Andri that prepared this event from the beginning until this moment today. And now I would like to pass my role as the host to Mrs. Julia Chi and National Archive of Singapore as the next host of SARBICA Executive Board Meeting 2022. Thank you very much. Terima kasih. Selamat sore. Until we meet again. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rini Agustiani. Ladies and gentlemen, next session. Next host of SARBICA Executive Board Meeting 2022. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, before we close this meeting, I would like to invite all the distinguished participants to join closing remarks delivered by newly elected Chairman of SARBICA, Mrs. Julia Chi. Hello, good afternoon, Mrs. Julia Chi. How are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
hello from Singapore.
I can clearly hear you. Okay, are you?
I will start.
Are you ready to begin? Okay, time is yours.
Yes, I am. Mr. Victorino Manalo, Executive Director, National Archives of Philippines and outgoing Chairman of SARBICA. Mr. Yu San Min, Director General, National Archives of Myanmar and Vice Chairman of SARBICA. Mr. Imam Gunato, Director General, and Ms. Rini, Secretary General of the National Archives of the Republic of Indonesia, who is the host of this international seminar, 22nd General Conference, and the 23rd Executive Board meeting. Distinguished guests, speakers, and Director Generals from the National Archives of Brunei, Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, our hardworking and dedicated SARBICA Secretariat, and colleagues from the archives. I would like to start by thanking Mr. Manalo for his astute leadership during his term as chairman. The establishment of the ASEAN Pandemic Response Archives, or APARA, and the recent conference led by the National Archives of Philippines are important in bringing together the various archives and heritage institutions to share and discuss the initiatives in documenting the COVID-19 pandemic and how we have adjusted our working environment and operations to handle the new situations. This was also a topic under this week's international seminar, and as SARBICA, we will continue to have these conversations and sharing in our future meetings. As the incoming chair of SARBICA, I hope to continue and build up the good work and initiatives by Mr. Manalo. I have 3 points to make, and I will be brief so that our hardworking organizers and hosts can have a deserving rest after this. So the first point is the spirit of sharing. ANRI has just concluded a successful international seminar on the theme of safeguarding the archives. I believe we have all benefited from the generous sharing by the speakers. And ANRI, who has been in the forefront of training its archivists As you can see from the number of Zoom participants of their webinars, they're very well attended. They have also generously extended their training to SARBICA members. And this is the kind of spirit of learning and sharing that we should continue to have. And it also shows the tightness of us at SARBICA. The second point is on advocacy and promotion of archives. In current times where resources are tight and archives are facing reprioritization of its work, we should still push ahead our efforts for outreach activities that helps archivists to communicate the value and relevance of our work to our stakeholders and the general public. For the National Archives of Singapore, we have the National Library Board's Libraries and Archives Blueprint, or LAT 25. Now, this is a 5-year plan to reimagine libraries and archives, and where we want to evolve to be a stronger companions to our patrons. So LAT 25 has a focus area on Singapore storytellers, which looks at strengthening the Singapore experience and for them to better appreciate our history. We have a treasure trove of materials, and we should tap on them to raise awareness of the archives. So we should share all these ideas that we have in terms of outreach and engagement at SARBICA and learn from one another how our archives have reached out to the public and where we can do more to strengthen our reach. And finally, I think it would be timely for us at SARBICA to also look at climate and sustainability in our archives. We could learn from our international counterparts who have already made headway in developing plans and managing its initiatives and activities to make it more sustainable to help tackle climate change. So this, of course, could be through our facilities, preservation strategies, where we could cut down on paper copies and strengthening digital operations. I look forward to continuing the good working relationship with SARBICA in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Julia Chi. Congratulations, Mrs. Julia Chi, for your position to be the chairman of SARBICA. May you be the best chairman, and SARBICA will be the leading archival organization, which will bring tremendous achievements on records and archive administration for the next 2 years. Well, we are now officially at the end of SARBICA International Seminar 2021. On behalf of National Archive of the Republic of Indonesia, thank you very much for making time to join us today. Hope to see you again in the next SARBICA event. Stay healthy, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.